Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be reviewing Friday the 13th Part 1. So last month I covered all of the Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy movies, and they were like really good. I love this film, still probably my favorite horror franchise. But growing up, it was those movies of Friday the 13th that I loved the most out of any horror film. And I knew that since we covered Freddy, the natural progression would be to cover Jason. So, this movie, the original, was the one I did not watch the most. I didn't watch this one the most. I like this movie, but it's probably because Jason's not the killer, and because it's a great film, and it's a good horror film. It's a very good starter. Kicked off this franchise, but I think Part 2 is better. And I have some of my personal favorites, like Part 4, Part 6, and Part 3. So, which I'll be covering soon. But this movie has so much merit. It really has this summer vibe to it. These are movies you turn on during the summer because they feel the most. That's why I think when I'm reviewing them, I want to review them during July. Because this is kind of the peak of summer. I mean, you still got August, but it just feels like a natural thing to cover them in the month of July when summer camps are going on. Because that's what this whole franchise is at, a summer camp. Besides Part 8 and Part 9, a little bit of camp there. Jason X. Yeah, but they're summer movies in their DNA. These movies are. So the original was directed by Sean S. Cunningham, who a lot of people think has done some bad parts of the franchise, like he made Jason Goes to Hell, or didn't make it, but was a producer, because that's when he finally got back in the franchise, after he was missing from 2 through 7, or 2 through 8, and it's kind of ironic the best ones he wasn't on with different directors. But I think he's still, obviously, he's a big reason why this franchise ever happened, so he still deserves credit for this. And Jason Goes to Hell is a weird movie, but it tried something new, so we'll talk about that then. But some of our best actors, Kevin Bacon started his career off here, and you know his infamous kill where he gets killed by the arrow by Pamela Voorhees after he's done having sex with Marcy halfway through the film. And then Adrienne King playing as Alice Hardy, our final girl of this franchise. Not the best, but still a really good character. She's not like I said, she's not my favorite final girl, because that's either Jenny or I think even Chris or Trish, who's Tommy's sister. And obviously Tommy's a better final survivor. And I mean, I think she's up there, maybe tied with Megan for one the 4th or 5th, 6th or something, a final girl in this franchise. But she does good for this film. She does a really good, you can tell she's scared because she finds her friends' bodies everywhere. That's the next part we're going to talk about, Tom Savini's effects. So, the MPA, I know they toned down a lot of the kills in this movie. They tortured this franchise a lot. They really put their hand in, toning down the gore in all these movies. I know Part 7 was the one that was hit the most by them. I think Part 7 or Part 8. But Part 1 still has some good gore, but it was toned down from what I've heard. So, but the arrow kill is still one of the best. It was replicated 3-4 times in this whole franchise. And another good kill, I think, is Mrs. Voorhees' death herself, which we'll discuss when we get to the end of the movie, talking about the finale of this film. And I think another good one was the axe. Marcy's character gets killed by Pamela halfway through the film. We don't know her name. We actually don't even know Pamela Voorhees' name until the 4th film, but I'll call her Pamela Voorhees because in the future we know that. Or you could just say Mrs. Voorhees. But so Betsy Palmer does a great job as Mrs. Voorhees. She's she's the reverse psycho role, and you don't really meet her till the last 10 minutes of the film. But she does this. It's like the reverse psycho, as Norman Bates was hearing his mother's voice telling him to kill. She's hearing Jason's voice telling her to kill. So it's the whole reverse of the psycho dynamic, which I'll cover one day. Psycho 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll cover those films one day. Probably next year. But she did such a great job. I know she was a really big actor in the 40s and 50s, early 60s. Because I think she was about 50 when this film came out. 53 or something. I don't know, something like that. But obviously she's not when people think about this franchise, they think about Jason as the main killer, but still, she has so much merit as the first killer in this whole franchise, and she's still a big part of this franchise, even when Betsy Palmer's not playing her anymore. Like, even in the third film, you have her body coming up out of the water to pull Chris under, which doesn't really make any sense, but I'll discuss that when we get to part 3. So let's finally talk about the movie, because I've been talking about the actors and the actresses and just some of the behind the scenes stuff. So we start out, I believe it's Annie, who's our camper at the start. She's the first to get killed, and then Jack and Marcy get killed, and then Brenda gets killed, and the other guy, Ned, he gets killed, and there's another, and then Steve, who's the family guy whose family just wanted to bring back Cam Blood, because the whole plot starts off after Jason drowned. Pamela, or we don't know as Pamela, kills 2 of the counselors who were supposed to be watching him a year after the drowning happened, and she does not let this place open back up, so that's why she springs back into action when the Hardys, or not the Hardys, when the Christies, Steve Christie, when the Christies want to open it back up. So Steve's got all his counselors there, and she starts picking them off one by one, and it all accumulates. When Steve comes back, gets shot, I guess stabbed with, he gets stabbed, and then Alice runs. She finds all her friends' bodies, and she meets Mrs. Voorhees, and she's relieved to see her. She's extremely excited because she's scared, and this is the first person, but she doesn't know she's the killer. But she soon realizes that once Mrs. Voorhees won't take her to Steve, that and when she reveals the knife, our final, a little bit of a brawl between them starts, and Mrs. Voorhees gets beat up a lot, and then it accumulates on the sand whenever Alice decapitates Mrs. Voorhees. And this is the thing that springs the rest of this movie into action, because I think in this part 2, Jenny says that this is probably what made Jason go, and this is why he would want to be a killer if he's still out there. The only person he ever loved was his mother. She took care of him, and he's been out in the woods because it's revealed he survived the drowning. He didn't drown, but he washed up somewhere in the woods or something and lived out like a hermit for all those years, being a hunter. And he sees his mother get decapitated, so that's why he goes for revenge at the beginning of part 2, and that's where he starts defending Camp Crystal Lake, his territory. And this is how all these movies start to happen. This one event launches the franchise, and we gotta talk about the ending though, the final part. One of the greatest jump scares in horror history. Alice is on the sound design. One last thing, Harry Manfredini did the soundtrack for these movies. You know it. It's one of the greatest in horror. I know I've been saying horror, interchangeable, but he's one of the sound effect that you know in the films, and all the opening themes and the music. Really good eerie, It's a great composer, great soundtrack. I wouldn't say it rivals the first Halloween, but it's iconic. And so this really happy, upbeat music starts to play as she gets in the canoe. She thinks she survived the killer. She's out there drifting, and she's sees the cops pull up, and then all of a sudden, Jason, the drowned boy, jumps out of the water and pulls her under. And it's one of the biggest jump scares in horror because you don't see it coming at all, and it's not played for shock. It's there. Well, I mean, it's not played for shock with how it is in The Conjurings. It is great. No one would see it coming. I cannot imagine the feeling most people got when they saw it the first time. I know when I saw it the first time, I jumped myself, and it doesn't shock me, but I still get that feeling even nowadays. But then she wakes up out of the water, and they're like, we never found a boy, so it's led up that she dreams, and we find out that she was dreaming in part 2 since he survived. But great ending, great film. It's very low budget, but what a success, because this movie did good coming off the Halloween craze. And most people would say this is a ripoff of Halloween. It started off that way, but I think it got its own identity as more of a sleazy slasher, gorier version of Halloween before the Halloween movies started doing kind of more Halloween 2 was more gory, kind of followed the gore of Friday the 13th Part 1. But so time to rate this movie. So Friday the 13th Part 1, I'm gonna rate it a, let's see, a 7. A 7.5 out of 10. Coming close to an 8. It's a good film, it's a great opener, but it's not the best of the franchise. And the best is yet to come. And next episode, we'll meet Jason for the first time. So I'll see you then. We already met him, but in like actual human form, we'll see him then. I love you guys. Take care. Stay blessed. Thank you guys for watching, as always.